Iceland was created by volcanoes. Mountains of hot magma rose from the depths of the earth. Rivers of molten lava poured down their slopes, solidifying into a jumble of rocks. Ash rained down, creating these fertile plains. Earthquakes helped twist and crumple the landscape. Some of the lava fields, or high plateaus, are so vast, it's easy to forget the volcano that made them. Other volcanoes lie hidden under vast sheets of ice. They've become the stuff of myth and legend. But in geological terms, Iceland is very young. It's still being built. It's only when an eruption has consequences across the world that the rest of us learn something Icelanders know well. These volcanoes haven't finished yet. On the 14th of April, 2010, Eyjafjallajökull erupted with an explosion that made Iceland the focus of a media storm. The ash cloud produced by the volcano spread over the Atlantic Ocean and Europe, cutting off one of the world's busiest airspaces. Almost every European airport closed, and airlines lost more than $1 billion. The 6-day standstill was disastrous for the economy. Worldwide, the tourist industry lost even more money, and countless small farmers and fishermen struggled to make ends meet as fish from Uganda, flowers from Kenya, and vegetables from Zambia were left to rot. Sports events and business meetings were cancelled. Meanwhile, around the volcano, the skies were dark and ash fell like rain, covering the fields and roads.
We may have to stop farming and move somewhere else. Leave the place where I grew up, my memories. Nobody really knows what lies in store.
A few months later, the eruption ended, leaving the last few wisps of water vapor and a thick blanket of ash covering the ice around the crater. While the rest of the world forgets now the disruption is over, Icelandic volcanologists are not fooled. They know there are several larger volcanoes lying in wait.
Eruptions are, of course, quite dangerous, and some of them are really very damaging, both to human life, to human health, and to structures. In Eyjafjallajökull we had a relatively small eruption, but in some other volcanoes here in Iceland we expect larger eruptions than that. So we should never forget that.
It had an impossible name, but by Icelandic standards, it was a small eruption. The big question is not whether another volcano will bring chaos and disruption to the world, but which one and when. Iceland's active volcanoes lie along the mid-Atlantic ridge. A long, jagged rift in the Earth's crust between two great continental plates. The rift almost divides Iceland in half. To the east lies Europe and Asia. To the west, the Americas. As the plates drift apart, the cracks widen and lava from deep in the earth escapes. With one of the highest densities of active volcanoes in the world, Iceland is a magnet for volcanologists. For decades, scientists have had this turbulent land under continual surveillance, and Iceland has become a giant laboratory. The huge fallout from Eyjafjallajökull has increased the pressure on the scientists to provide answers. Paul Einarsson has spent the last 40 years studying earthquakes and volcanoes. He trained most of Iceland's geologists and is still trying to understand how this volatile land was created and how it could change.
One of the problems of doing volcanology in Iceland is that we don't only have one active volcano or two active volcanoes. We have about 30 active volcanoes all along the rift. And some volcanoes we don't really know very much about because many of them are really very complicated beasts, and it takes really a lot of measurements to understand what they are doing and how they do things. Some volcanoes are simple and easy to understand. One thing that we know about our volcanoes, that they're all different. They're all different from each other. We can rarely apply our ideas about one volcano to the next volcano. So we have to measure them all. That's as simple as that. So we have to spread out our observations. We have to make observations all around the country, and that it requires a lot of work.
Science has come a long way since Jules Verne's professor tried to journey to the center of the Earth through an Icelandic volcano. But the challenge is still to work out what is going on deep below, from the few signs on the surface.
Most of our volcanoes are doing nothing. They're just sitting there, recuperating after the last eruption or something, but most of them are very quiet and not doing anything. Some of them are preparing for the next eruption, but they are all possible candidates for the next eruption.
While any one of the 30 or more active volcanoes could erupt, there are 4 extremely dangerous candidates. Legend has it that Hekla is the gate to hell. She keeps her secrets well hidden and then erupts suddenly and dramatically every 10 years or so. Askja is a beautiful but deadly giant, sleeping quietly high in the mountains. Few people knew she existed until she exploded with shocking consequences over a century ago. Hiding under the ice, Katla is the most fickle. She has demonstrated her power more than 20 times since people first came to Iceland, and now she's overdue. And finally, at the summit of this icy land, Grimsvotn is so remote that it was left in peace for the trolls and dwarves, until scientists came calling. Bjorn Oddsson specializes in volcanoes which erupt under the ice. Grimsvotn lies under Europe's largest glacier. The relentless wind and bitter cold make it difficult to work up here. But scientists can at least take advantage of the long summer daylight hours to get to know the volcano better. Not easy when it's hidden under a vast featureless ice field, which in some places is 2,000 feet deep. The ice is so thick that eruptions can take place beneath it without anyone but the scientists being aware. These cliffs are the walls of the crater, poking through the ice, the only visible part of the volcano. Below this jumble of ice and rocks lies not only the rift in the Earth's crust, but the hot spot or upwelling of molten rock which helped create Iceland. At this point, the hot magma from deep within the Earth pushes directly upwards towards the thin crust or ice at the surface. Bjorn and his companion are literally standing on top of a giant ice-covered cauldron.
We are standing at Grímsvötn caldera, in the center of Grímsvötn caldera, which is based on top of the hotspot, the underlying hotspot of Iceland. And the hotspot is coming from the mantle. It's magma from the mantle, which is rising straight up to the crust of the ground and causing high volcanism at this area. It's like in Hawaii and Azore Islands, a magma plume rising from the mantle. We can talk about double activity because it's between two continents of the mid-Atlantic Ocean. So we have magma coming up while the continents are spreading, and also due to the hot spot. And that might be the one reason for the Grímsvötn is the most active volcano of Iceland, having confirmed of 70 eruptions since settlements in 874. This is a high heat geothermal area, and under the ice we have spots of geothermal causing the ice to melt, and so we see the cauldron on the surface of the glaciers. And the more heat we have, the deeper the cauldron is. So we monitor every year, we monitor these cauldrons by GPS measurements and radar to see if they are growing deeper or not.
The rising magma melts the ice from below, forming huge lakes of water under the glacier. The ice sits on top, like a cap or a bottle top, holding in the water. When the volcano is ready to erupt, the rising heat causes even more water to melt. And sometimes the force of water shifts the cap suddenly, leading to dangerous flooding.
Because it's in center of the caldera, it's difficult to reach the outer world. So we have to come here twice a year and download the data from the station. And now measurements are showing that the pressure, underlying pressure in the magma chamber, is close to what we had at the last eruption. So we could expect it any time. The last eruption, yes, 1983, it was under the cliff over there. The year 2000, we have an eruption under the cliff more to the right, and 2004 in the corner over there. The eruption sites have been moving more to the west for the last eruptions. So I would expect the next eruption to happen to the northwestern corner of the caldera. But like I say, when you found a rule in the nature, it changes.
So Grímsvötn is as unpredictable as the next volcano. But these fresh carpets of ash and deep overflowing cauldrons signify to many volcanologists that this remote giant could be the next to